In admin lesson number 9, we're going to look at project and onboarding settings in Tracker. First, we'll go into tools and we'll look at naming projects in the system if you want to change it from projects to something else. So you can click on Display System and Conventions, and this is where under the Naming Conventions tab, you can change the naming conventions of some of the main parts of the system. So for instance, if we wanted it to be called Onboarding, we could rename Projects and Projects to Onboarding. When you change that and hit Save, you would see that automatically it would rename the Project tab into Onboarding. So that's how you can change the naming conventions if you want. For today's lesson, we'll go ahead and just leave it as the default, which is Project and Projects. So next, we'll click into Tools and we'll look at the project settings themselves, which are going to be on the left-hand side under the Application Settings, under Project Settings right here. This is where, under the General tab, we can change the prefix. So when a project is created, there's a 3-letter prefix, so it can be customized or removed. You can select the default project type, which can be anything from standard, or you can go into the project type option here, and you could add or remove different types of projects. So if we wanted to have one be a contractor, we could enter that in and hit OK, and we could differentiate the type of projects. So we can select the default here from that drop-down list. So if we refresh our screen, we'll now have the new value in that list, and you'll see contractor or standard. Notify department users of assignment. This is when an assignment occurs. You can notify just the user, or you can have it go out to all users in a particular department. Notify candidates of project changes. You can have it notify the entire project team, so anybody that's assigned to that project, or you can have it go out to just the project manager. Auto-create project on the right-hand side will give you the ability to auto-create a project at a certain stage. This would just be something you want to be careful to make sure that it's not creating projects that aren't valid. Default project priority will allow you to select a default priority of low, medium, or high. You can change this list by going into your project priority tab on the left-hand side. You can click on to rename, remove these, or you can hit Add New Item to add a new option into the drop-down list. Now, you also have the ability in here to create or copy over job activities, job notes, or job documents. So what this will do is anything that's inside of a job will be automatically carried over into the project once it's created. So this can just be set to yes or no. So activities can be pulled through, or they can be left inside the job to access at a later stage. So that takes us through the high-level project settings. Of course, you can hit Save to save any of your changes. If we hit Return to Tools, we'll look at the next steps, which are going to be setting some of the default tasks inside of the project itself. So here, we'll take a look first at internal projects. Internal projects here is where you're going to want to set up your default tasks for when a project is created, such as hours worked, overtime, and then in the absence management module is where you can put in any type of absences that you're tracking. So these are going to be the 2 default types of projects here. We'll want to hit New Internal Project Activity. So we'll start with building out our time tasks. So this is where we can say we want to track hours worked. We can put in a note, or we can leave that blank. We can select, do we want it to be billable, which in this case we do, and do we want it to use the standard or the overtime rate on the system. Next, we can hit Save and add another. And now we could put in our next task, which could be overtime. We could say, yes, we want this billable as well, and we want this to pull from the overtime rate. We could hit Save and add another. And we could also go in and book in holiday time or vacation, PTO, whatever you want to track. In this case, if it was not billable, you could enter that in. And then you could say, do we want it to pull the standard or the overtime rate? When we hit save and close, it will drop these in. Now again, you'll notice that this page doesn't refresh automatically, so if you just refresh your page, you'll see those new options added in. If you click the drop down here, we'll see that we have our 3 that we've added in. So you can click on them to delete them, to update or change any of the information. But that's how you can select your default project. So anytime a project is created, these 3 tasks will automatically be inside of there for the candidates to book against. Next, we'll look at our absence management. So if we hit new internal project activities, we can look at absence management, and you'll see that the options will refresh here. So this is where we could say we want to track holiday inside of our absence management module, and we want it to be noted as a holiday absence. We could also say save and add another. We want to also measure sick time. Sick time we don't want to go in under holiday. We want it to be marked as another type of absence. And we could build out as many different types of codes you're wanting to keep track of in the absence management module. So if I hit save and close, it will add that in. If we refresh our screen again, we'll see that now we have our holiday and our sick time configured inside of the absence management module here. So next, we'll go in and we'll take a look at not only the internal project tasks, but we'll take a look at the default project activities, which are going to be where you can keep track of any onboarding tasks or any additional tasks beyond just your standard hours that are going to be for any project you're creating. So in here, this is where we could build out a task set, such as we could call it onboarding. We can put in a description if we want. And then you can select where you want it shared to. When we hit save and continue, you'll see that it will open up a couple different options at the top. And this is where we can add phases and activities to our default project plan here. So a phase is going to be separating out. So we could say day 1 through 3 could be considered our first phase. If I hit OK, you'll see there will be a bold and underlined phase. Next, I can add my activities in. So this is where all of my things that happen. So I could say application signed. I could make it activity order number 2. I could say I want it to start on day 0, so from the start date of the project, and we want to give 2 days for this to be completed. Now it will drop in that task, and I can add in a next activity here. So the next one I could go in and say, has their degree been verified? Order could be number 3. Start date could be the beginning, and this one I could say as well, 2 days. Now the next one I could enter in could be, is an I-9 been completed? I could bring again this on day 0, but I could say we want to give 3 days for this if you wanted to give a different time frame. So what this will do is when you are working within a project, you can apply this project plan, and it will drop in the entire project plan with as many different phases and tasks that you put in. So if you have a project plan with 20 different steps in it, you can populate it inside that project in a click of a button. You can also go out and build as many different project types as you want. So here we have our onboarding project. You could have multiple different activity sets that you could drop in with the click of a button. So if we click on this again, if you wanted to go back in, you can always add, remove. You can also reorder. If you wanted to go in and say, I want our I-9 to be the very first task, I can drag and drop this order around, hit save order, and you would see that it would update that and reorder the numbers. So that's how we can set up a project plan inside of that project that's separate from the internal tasks. So next we'll go into tools and we'll look at our next step, which is going to be setting up the timesheets now that we've set up our project defaults and we've also set up our tasks for the system. Under the financial settings side, this is where you have your timesheet settings. So when you click on your timesheet settings, this is going to have your default timesheet settings access. So if we start from the very top here, first one is going to determine your units in a working day. for reporting, so you can change this to have the number of hours in a working day. Next line will determine the number of hours in a working week for reporting. For timesheet entry, you can set a default for what they'll see for the start and end time of that day. This can be changed on each individual placement. This is where you can set the default for the system. Yes, here, timesheets by default is where you can say yes or no. Do I want timesheets to be a default for each candidate on the system? Your allow activity creation. This is going to be one that you can leave as no. If there was any need for candidates to create ad hoc tasks inside of a project, this is where you could leave that as a yes. Most of the time, you're going to want them to book against the project tasks that you just created so that they're only booking to those set tasks. Now, timesheet tickets is going to be a part of the system if you were using the ticketing portion of Tracker that this would apply, so this is a setting that you can ignore. Now, allow zero values on timesheets. This is going to be one you'll want set to no. What this will do is if a candidate has entered in a value of 0 for a day and hits saved, it would count that as a time entry, where typically you're going to want that to be no, so you can tell the difference between when a time is entered so that it's not saving a bunch of 0 entries. So if you had a week where it was Monday through Friday and they entered 8 hours on Monday and hit save, if you had this set to yes, it would save the 0 value for the rest of the week as a time entry. So it's always best to have it set to no. Timesheet in plan format will allow you to see, do we want it to list out as days or hours when we're looking at the timesheets in a row format. Timesheet clock in out will allow you to pick, if you're using clock in out, do I want it to be in single minute increments all the way up to hour increments, depending on how you want them to book in their time. Default timesheet entry will allow them to see, do you want them to, as a default, book in time with a start and end clock, or do you want it to just be simply the hours or days that they're working? Timesheet entry cutoff allows you to say, I want candidates to be able to access timesheets forever. I want them to only be able to access it 1 week later, or X amount of weeks. You can set it so it will lock and cut off that timesheet once the predetermined amount of time has passed. Now, approval submission. This is where in the candidate portal, you can pick, do you want them to have a button that they can submit their timesheet? If you say no, there will not be a button in their time portal. If you say submit for internal approval, when they hit that submit button, it would send the approval into Tracker in the timesheet portion for you guys to look at, approve, and then send out to the client. Submit for email approval would set it in the candidate portal for them to be able to submit directly to the client. So this is where you can set this as a database-wide setting. There is an override in the candidate section that we'll go over shortly, but this is where you can pick for the entire database whether you want there to be no button in the portal, whether you want there to be a button that goes internally for you guys to look at and approve, or whether you want it to go directly to the client. So the next box down here is going to be the absence management setting. This is where you can say I want the holiday period to start at a given month in the year. You can also select for the holiday approver who you want it to be. If it's an internal approver that's required, you can pick that person on the team. Timesheet message is where you can put a footer in. So if you wanted to put a note in here saying all time has to be entered by 5 p.m. on Thursday, or you will not get paid. So this is where you can enter that in, and it will display on the footer of each candidate portal when they look at their timesheet. The next options below is where we can set up the approval description. So on the email that goes out to the client, will they see the words approved? Will they see the words pending or denied on that particular template? And then you can also set it so the approval denial emails go to the candidate. Both of them do, none of them do, or just approved or denied. So next thing we'll take a look at is the default candidate access. This is where for all candidates on the system when they're created, you can set a default to say, do you want them to have the ability to enter timesheets, yes or no? Do you want them to see online forms? So forms in the document library that are made visible online. This would make them appear in the candidate portal. You can also say, do you want them to be able to upload files, yes or no? So these are all simple changes that you can make across the entire database. So now we'll go out and we'll look at our candidate example here, which is Sean Thomas. And we'll look at Sean's profile. And in his profile, we have the timesheet and expense section. So this is where you're going to have the portal information, which is what we'll send out to the candidate. So this is where we can say, yes, we want them to be a portal user, or no. You have their username here that you guys can update or change, as well as the password. So you have full control of that candidate and what they have access to. If they say they're not able to log in, or if they're having any issues, you can look at it right here. Down beneath here on the timesheet and expense section, this is where you have some additional overrides at a candidate level. So we just set the defaults across the entire database, but this is where we can go in on an individual level and we can say, do we want this person to see timesheets, yes or no? Do we want them to be able to book expenses, yes or no? Do we want them to be able to submit timesheet approvals, yes or no? And that would make that blue button in their portal appear or disappear. You can also say, do we want them to have access to online documents? Do we want them to upload documents? And do we want them to see absence management in their portal? So this is where you can give an override where if you have a new candidate or somebody that you may not trust, you can set this at an individual level. So what these will change if you go into the portal, you can hit the blue button to log into the portal as the candidate. And this is where you'll see all of the different buttons here. So if I were to change those to no, you would see these buttons disappear. So if I were to click on no for absence management, if I didn't want that in the portal, if I hit save changes, and I go right back into that candidate portal, if you refresh your screen, you're going to see that absence management would disappear. So that's how you can change the look and feel of that candidate's timesheet from those individual settings. So we'll turn that back on for now. And next, we will go and take a look at a few of the templates that you'll want to customize or tailor to make sure that the templates are set up exactly as you want. So if we go into Tools, in the Tools section under your standard templates, this is where there's a few system templates that you'll want to take a look at. So under the System option here, you're going to see a couple different templates. So one is going to be the timesheet authorization request email. So this is the email that will go out to your clients. So if I hit template text, this is where the template will show us what is going to go out to the client. So we can change any of the verbiage in here. You'll see that the approve and deny, these are the words that you can change if you want. But if we wanted to change any of this, we can simply change the text, hit save and close. It would update that email that goes out to the candidates or to the clients. The other one that you'll want to look at and potentially customize is going to be the absence request template. Again, this absence request is what's going to go out to the manager saying that there's an absence request for the candidate, and it's going to pull through from the absence management portion. So if this is something that you would want to change or update any of the verbiage in, the only thing you wouldn't want to change is the bracketed tags, because these will pull from the system. If they're deleted or anything has changed in them, they potentially could unhook from the workflow. You also have an expense authorization request, which is one that you can customize the same way with the others. And the other big one that you'll want to take a look at is your candidate template, which is going to be the portal login details. So this is one that will go out to the candidate that will send them their username and password for the timesheet portal. The one thing that you'll notice is since your portal is unique to each database, the click here link will need to be updated. So I'll give you guys an example of how this can be updated. So we can leave this template open. We'll want to go back into our example of Sean Thomas here. So once you have a candidate on the system, when you go into the timesheet and expense section, as long as they are set to a portal user, we can go out to the portal as this candidate, and if we hit the red log off button, this will be your portal address, which will point to your specific company. So you can take this entire link, and we can copy that and bring it into the template. Now, if you have the portal hosted, or if you've put it on your website or something that you want it in a very specific place, you can always update the template with that. But in this case, if you're just using the portal as we have it set up, we can go back into that template for the portal logon details, and you can select the click here button. When you hover over that and select it, we can go up and click on our hyperlink to insert or edit a link there. And what we can do is we can paste in that URL. We can change the text if we want to say something different from click here. And when we hit OK, it will drop in a hyperlink that they can access the portal in one click. So when I hit save and close, now that's going to be updated so that when a candidate gets that welcome email, it's going to tag in their information, their password, and then also a unique link to the portal. So that takes us through the project in onboarding settings, including how to set up the timesheets and set up the candidate portal in TrackerRMS.